This is going to be a little bit longer than most videos. It's quite an involved build, to be honest. It's very nice. There's no issues that way. But once you get into like 148 jets, there's always a lot of little details. So what we've got here is the 188th Fighter Wing from Arkansas Air National Guard. This is 2006, and I think this Tamiya kit really goes back to around that period. As I say, it is very nice. No complaints at all. And before we get into it, definitely do subscribe, because it does help me out and makes a difference. It's actually nice just to know people are paying attention, I suppose. So to get on to the build, I've basically already taken out some of the cockpit parts here. There's nothing really surprising in that sense, but you can see how, especially, what is it, coming on 20 years old, the molding here is excellent. This is real Tamiya quality. There's nothing I could complain about. The only mistakes you're going to make with this are going to be self-inflicted. Trusty Tamiya grey, that's almost stock standard for all this stuff. So I'm just coming in, painting grey plastic, a different shade of grey. But it does give something to work with. If I do have one regret with this kit, it's nice enough that I do wish I had bought aftermarket cockpit upgrade. Instead, I end up messing around here, which is fine. I mean, it's not end of the world stuff, but in hindsight, I really would have preferred to have got a decent cockpit upgrade. Not only that, I think you save a lot of time. You get a much better finish. It's not saying I was too hung up about. I just wanted to have fun and get in and build the kit. But yeah, you can spend a lot of time just fiddling about on this stuff, whereas you pay the $20, just glue in a nice panel. I guess everyone has their opinions on that, but it depends what it is. Like, I think in this case, where it's a really nice kit, then it's justifiable. If it's a $20 kit, there's no way I'm going to be buying aftermarket parts for it. It doesn't make sense. So I'm just dry brushing on the instrument panel here. Again, no huge surprises. And it does come together. The molding itself, the Tamiya standard issue, is fine. I wouldn't have any complaints about that. Just like I say, it almost becomes a question of efficiency. And like I say, I think this kit retails for $80 or $90 in Australia. I actually bought mine in all places of Bangkok. I was in Bangkok the other month. I think I mentioned it. So it was one of those, there's a Tamiya store, I'll go have a look. And because I wandered around, and we ended up, I suppose it's not a big task, but we did go for a walk and all that. So then I'm there, and it's I better buy something now I'm here. So it was like my souvenir of all the things I could buy in Bangkok. I bought an F-16 Tamiya kit, but that's the origin of it. So I think it's fairly hefty price even still. Like I say, I did look, and I think about $80 in Australia. The build is superb. This is classic Tamiya fit. But having said that, it is intricate, and there is a few parts you need to pay attention to. So essentially, the build starts off with the cockpit, or I should say maybe half the cockpit, and then you go on to the main wheel well, and we get into the intake, and as you can see there, the turbine. I was doing a lot of pre-fitting, which is a good habit to get into anyway, but it's a great kit, but there is a level of detail that, like me, I've been doing P-47s or whatever, moving on to modern jets. Yeah, there's just that extra level of detail. So there you can see we're really already moving along. I'm just coming over with some metallic here onto the turbine itself, or the fan blades. This is one of those ones which I always do, and I'll probably say it in every video. You sometimes wonder, some of this stuff, you're not going to see it. So I come in and I do all the intakes all white and so on, spotless, but now it's finished and on the shelf. Yeah, I'm probably never going to see any of that ever again. One thing I do think was cool though is the main wheel bay is very well done on this kit. Actually, I'd say everything's well done. As usual, there's a few holes that need to be put through. Again, not a big deal. Just watch your finger as it comes on the other side. I think that's for the ECM pod. So one thing, do be careful if you're not paying attention. It's a hassle if you forget to drill the holes for ordnance or the mounts, and then you're trying to figure it out later on. It's not end of the world stuff, but it's just one of those ones that if you miss it and you're rushing through instructions and you try and come back and do it later, it just adds a lot of work and complication to something that's really easy. On the other side of that, I wouldn't worry too much about over drilling holes because they're easy to patch. I've just come in with some matte black here for the cockpit area. Again, no surprise, it looks shiny there, gloss, but it's actually matte, and you'll see that as it dries off. So that's starting to look like a bit of a plane now. We're getting a bit of F-16 happening. The fit is excellent. I'll keep harping on about that. I'm not one of those sadistic people that like to really have to sand and file and get out angle grinders and all that stuff. I would rather spend my time enhancing what's there than fighting something that just doesn't want to go together. So, yeah, and there's always the usual cleanup, but that's just part of any kit, and that's part of any good build, I think. So you can see here we're just progressing through. There's a lot of nice details and finishing touches on this, that's for sure. The lights, or the wingtip lights, they go in there. They're a bit, I suppose, unorthodox. They're not the normal way you would see it done, but it all comes together really nice. The other thing I would say is there is quite a few, like the rubber grommet type approach. I'm not sure the technical name, but essentially pins and rubber seals. Oh, well, here we are there. You'll see what I mean. This is even for some of the main ordnance, for the rudder and so on, and tailplane. You can see how it goes together here. They're a bit fiddly, but there's, again, no big dramas. So that goes in and just gets seated in, glued in. Fair bit of work on getting the wheel well done, but I think it's worth it. It's actually very neat looking when it's all done. Here I'm just putting in what I assume is compressed air cylinder. I'm not sure. Someone can tell me in the comments, actually, you guys that have probably worked on them. So as I say, there's a lot of really heavy duty structural components going in here. So this is for the tailplane. There's the intakes. I'm just, like I said, coming through, I guess, what would you say, compulsive, even though it's never going to be seen. I still like it all to be finished in, what would you say, proper white. There's a fair bit of painting, I'd say, on this. Actually, it's painting sectional parts. So here's the main tail pins. They're, half-inch pins that go through. You can see how that goes together there. It's all easy enough. It does add a lot of structural integrity. The interesting thing is, though, at least to me, you've got this really super, structural steel pins going in quite a few places through the plane, but not on the undercarriage itself, which I think would probably be where it's going to sag in future. You can see here the fit, no dramas at all. It just goes together. Shake and bake, as some people would say. I did go to what you'd say the extra detail and carve out some of those ducts that are mentioned. You can see they're in the instructions. I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure what they're for, but just did what I'm told. And you can see there where it's all pre-drilled for the mounts. Like that was what I was getting at before. If you forget to put them in at this point, later on you can fix it up, but it does add a lot of headache that you just don't need. And if you drill too many, they're very easy to fix up. Just a bit of putty or whatever will fix them. The intake is quite complex, and what you can see here, what I've done is pre-fit everything before I actually did come back and put in the white. So there's a bunch of, I'd say, almost different layers on this intake. You'll see how it goes together, but it's quite complex. It's not saying that you're going to get stuck on, but it's almost intriguing, just the complexity that goes into this intake. Like one section, I'd say this part and the undercarriage were the most complex parts. And the undercarriage is complex, but it's quite intuitive. The intakes itself, yeah, even for me, there was a fair bit of pre-fitting and, okay, this goes here type of thing. No, it's not saying that you're going to get stuck on, but I'd just say take your time and you'll get there. It's pretty cool. It is, again, well engineered. So you can see how that all goes together. And then that'll basically be a submodule in itself that will drop right onto the main fuselage. To make things easier, I'm just coming in, doing some of the wheel well in white. There's a few side parts, I'm not sure what they would call, panel parts. So that's like I said, that's one of the big modules, and then the next part is onto this undercarriage. And I actually enjoyed doing the undercarriage. It was well done, but like I say, I'm just a little bit intrigued that they didn't put some reinforcing on the undercarriage, because there's quite a bit of metal goes through the plane. It is a little bit fiddly, but it's almost snap fit as well. So you're not going to have any great dramas. I alternate between tweezers and fingers. And then I've come back doing everything white. There's actually quite a lot of white to go on all these components. And then what I'll do is I'll come back with some silver just to do the shafts and bearings. There's the front wheel. Some parts, yeah, they are a bit small, but like I say, you can see here, even though they're small, the fit, yeah, no issues at all. And like here, a lot of it actually just almost snaps together. You still got to glue it, don't get me wrong, but from a fit perspective, it's nice because you can actually easily test your fit first. I'm just doing the lights here. What I do on lights is I'll put a drop of silver, in this case, in there, let that dry a bit, and then I'll drop the lenses on. While I've got the silver, I'm just adding, what would you say, little bit of scuff and detail. I wouldn't call it weathering, but just gives it a little bit more of a lived-in look. And like I say, the actual oiled surfaces. So that's the landing lights all going together there. There's a few decals to go on, which just adds that extra level of detail, which is always cool. Oh, and since we're coming up to the halfway mark, yeah, do hit that subscribe button. It does make a difference. I don't like to harp on, and I definitely don't want to sound like I'm begging, but it really does help out with YouTube. Basically, they think you're an outcast if you've got no subscribers, and then they won't push the video. So yeah, definitely do that. Help me out, and I'll keep making more videos, assuming you like them. Okay, so back onto this undercarriage. Yeah, there's a bit of fiddling around. One thing, this is just saying, you can take it as a tip or whatever. A little bit of decal softener, whichever one you prefer, is useful on putting those small decals onto a curved surface, because they might not lay flat. So if you're having trouble, just a little dab, but be careful, otherwise you'll drag off the decal itself onto your brush. I'm just adding some basic upgrade here. It seems silly to me that there was almost the attachment points on the undercarriage, but no hydraulic line. So I just got some, that evergreen, very thin strips, and added that little bit of detail. So you can see it there where it's come through. And that's the undercarriage itself. Very, very nice. I actually had fun building the undercarriage. The fit here is very typical Tamiya. Interestingly, Tamiya kits are very nice, and so long as you want to stick with the plan. If you don't want to stick with the plan, Tamiya kits can get complicated very quickly. They're not designed to be flexible. So I've just done these in the up position, and no great dramas. But if you want to start going crazy, any modifications I've noticed on Tamiya kits can get a bit of a tangle quite quick. I think that's just the mentality. It's like, I don't know, the Tamiya mentality. I'll leave it at that. Just, this is the way it's done. You build your plane, move on. Any customization, it's not really their way of thinking. So you can see how this all starts to go together. And I'm still not sure why it, like I said, you got these big steel pins going through there, but there's no real support on the undercarriage, which I think is probably one of the main places you would want it, because undercarriages, especially on this plane, F-16 is not the biggest of planes, but when it's all finished and all the ordnance is on there, it's quite a heavy plane. So I wouldn't be surprised if in future, maybe in a year or two, there is some sag on the undercarriage. We'll see. Just one of those ones. So that's the whole tail going together. You get a good view there of those steel pins that are holding it all in place. It's actually very nice. One thing I do like about that is I could take off the tail, paint it, and in this case the red for the Arkansas Air National Guard, and just press it back on. The only snag there is that I did end up adding a bit of glue just to make it sit flush. So onto the nose, I did put in some fishing sinkers, fishing weights, wherever you're from, with a little bit of epoxy. It's not, I didn't see it mentioned in the instructions, but I've been bitten a few times, so I just do it now. This was one thing that was, let's say, something I haven't really done much of before, but I wanted to spend some time on the exhaust nozzle. So my first step was just to come over in a nice silver. Then I'm using the Tamiya clears. I've used other clears, but for some reason I actually really like the Tamiya clears. I think the Tamiya clears are the best of them all, and they're even better than the Mr. Hobby type clears. So I've come over with blue, then as you can see, clear orange, and I'm just really very light here actually. And like I say, so you've got a base silver, then blue and orange, which I've obviously let dry, to try and give that sort of shimmery sort of effect. Definitely not an expert on this, but I was happy with how this did come out. So you can see there how it's almost what would you say, like an oil filter type effect. What I did in the final stage was come back over very lightly with more silver, almost as a clear coat of silver on top, so that toned down the color. What I'm doing now is just hand brushing in the darker parts. So that's the finished exhaust nozzle. Pretty happy with it. I did come back, and you'll see in a second, where I even used a graphite pencil just to add that finishing touch on this. So not saying I've done a lot of, but I was actually really happy with how this come about, and it wasn't something I'd say was hugely complicated or a massive detour. I actually had a bit of fun. Onto the canopy. This is one of those pet hates which I don't really understand, but the seam line right down the middle, it's not a big deal, but if you're 14 or whatever and you've bought a kit, you kind of like, what's going on? So I have spent a bit of time here for those that haven't seen how to clean that up. First step, I just scrape off the bulk of it with my knife. Oh, as an aside, there seems to be a hell of a lot of debate about what color the canopy should be on an F-16. It seems to be smoke with either clear or not smoke and so on. It just seems to depends where and when. So yeah, onto this canopy, I scrape off the main seam line. Then I'm just coming back through with I think this is coarse polishing compound. You can even use toothpaste. I'm lazy, so I use my little Tamiya drill to help along, and that's just a cotton bud or Q-tip that I've chucked in there. But you definitely don't need that. So once I'm done and rinsed, yeah, almost gone, and I could keep going on that. It's not a hard thing, so if you do come across that, don't panic at all. Don't worry about it. Like I said, you can technically even use toothpaste and some kitchen paper. It'll do the same thing. On the paint scheme, I did lose some of the video there, so I apologize, but you didn't really miss that much. The one thing I'd say is I've actually I did divert from Tamiya a bit, and I did look at some reference photos for these 188th Fighter Wing, and the grey actually is quite dark, because I was a little bit worried at first, so I did snoop around and have a look at the real thing. So you can see there is quite a difference in the greys, and yeah. So don't start yelling at me. I did look at reference photos, and that's how it looked. So there's my cool exhaust going on. Pretty happy with that. I always get a kick out of removing tape and masking. That's always cool. It's where you actually feel like you're getting somewhere. Well, assuming nothing's gone wrong. There seems to be less and less going wrong these days. So there's the tail, flying razorbacks. Actually looks pretty cool. Interestingly, when I was looking at the reference photos, there was the exact same scheme, the flying razorbacks, the same markings and all of that, except just in light grey. So there is a lot of variation out there, that's for sure. It does pay to look at the reference images, because I couldn't actually find the exact one that Tamiya seems to have used. So in that case, yeah, your choice. Do it. You can do it how you like to do it. So we're on to decals now. There's actually not a lot of decals here. Most of the decals on these are on the tail. Even on the rest of the aircraft, there's not that many. It's not like doing a F-14 or something like that, where there's trillions of small ones. No, these are pretty functional. So I'm just removing the excess usual stuff with my decals. Interestingly, this was one of those builds where my desk and workspace just got messier and messier as the build progressed. So you can see here how it's looking. I'm really pretty happy with it. This is where you can love this or hate it, but once you get onto the Ordnance, I think I ended up spending another week, maybe. So what you're looking at there is that's the AIM 9X Sidewinder. They all go together well, but there's just that almost fiddly detail on doing the weapons. And I can understand why some people are happy just doing weapons kits, but can drag on. I think in the whole build, I was probably a week plus just doing the Ordnance. And on the fuel tanks, I think this is the 370 gallons. Again, there's the steel pins and the grommets to hold it all together. So, which is nice. especially for fuel tanks, because you can easily take them off and on. Again, no great genius work on this. This was just light grey and onto the decals here. There's not it is fairly self-explanatory at this point as to what's going on. I think they're the filling areas. You can see in the background where I've even got the paveway 2s. And this is onto the Lightning II targeting pod. This was actually a fun build. Even the optical part is gimbaled, so it does move. Got the little danger decals and so on. I don't know why it's weird. Like some parts I don't like doing, but I actually had a lot of fun making that. And when it comes together, it was pretty neat. Really just one of those odd things. I think, and it was probably one of the last parts I had even done there. So yeah, for some reason that one, yeah, I got a bit of a kick out of doing that. Don't ask me why. But you can see in the background there, like most of the ordnance is on. Just to take you through it, there's GBU 12 paveway 2s. What else have I got? The ALQ 184 ECM pod. I think there's the Sidewinders and, like I said, the targeting pod, and there's 2 370-gallon wing tanks. So after all that was done, really at this point I'm just coming back onto the final decal work. And like I said, there's actually not much. There's not even that many of the typical no step and all of that. All the main ones very easily done. It wasn't time consuming at all. As usual, I use a mix of fingers and tweezers. I will say I do use a lot more tweezers. I didn't go into much work on or videoing the pilot. I think their figures are always their own specialty thing, and it's not saying I'd even say I'm hugely confident on. I need to do more of that and learn a bit more, I think. So there's that ECM going on. Oh, sorry, the lightning pod going on. Like I say, that was actually a really fun mini build in itself. Just final lighting and clear parts coming in now. Really just some of that last detail work. So I think the navigation lights, you can see there how the tail section, it still does need to be glued down, otherwise you end up with a bit of a gap there. So I think that's just doing the port navigation light now. And this is nice because the fit is typical Tamiya stuff. So yeah, like you can see there, you just put it in, hold it in, done. No great dramas at all. So here's a nice, actually quite a nice shot of the detail on that. Bit of cleanup as always, and even to be honest, even after I finish the video, I'll normally notice some things while I'm doing the editing, and I'll come back and clean it up. So here's all the little mini, no step and don't touch, don't put your fingers in here type of decals. But as I say, there wasn't even that many of them. So as we get to the end of this build, I definitely would recommend it. It's another kit that I would buy again. I enjoyed it. The only catch, if I'd say that, is that it ended up being a lot more involved than I expected. Like, fair enough, I've got like F4s and F-14s, and I've got quite a few Navy planes, to be honest, but I didn't know too much about F-16. It's actually the first F-16 I've ever done. So yeah, that was interesting, and I've seen F-16s a lot over the years. Like I know they're very common in Asia, Thailand, Singapore, all them used to run F-16s. So I've seen them plenty of times, but it was something I never paid too much attention to. So there it is. We have some nice photos. You can have a look. Once again, I'm really happy with this and how it come out. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Maybe learnt a little bit, and you can definitely see that there's a fair bit of work went into this one. Not all perfect, but yeah, at the end of the day, I was very happy with it. So this is the first video for the new year. I'd like to say Happy New Year to everyone. Definitely do subscribe. Stay tuned. I'm not quite sure what video or what model I'm going to do next. I think I've got a Hawker Tempest sitting there on the bench, so maybe that one. And as usual, yeah, definitely do like, subscribe, hit me up in the comments. Always love hearing from you all. Stay safe out there. Enjoy your break if you're in the southern hemisphere. Otherwise, best of luck for the new year. Thanks again.